Please pray with me. Spirit of wisdom, Spirit of love, minister to us, your people. May only truth be spoken, may only truth be heard. Amen. Our gospel lesson says, when God comes knocking, be ready for action and have your lamps lit. So we read that from the Gospel of Luke, and like many books of the New Testament, we're being encouraged to actively wait for Jesus to appear in our lives. Like someone returning from a trip abroad, or in today's passage, returning from a wedding banquet. And you think weddings are fancy today. In most cultures of the world, weddings last for a few days, sometimes a whole week. And you know, us uptight North Americans, we say, well, what a waste. But think about this. This is so cool. I had a sociologist teacher point this out to me once. In other cultures, the whole village comes to the wedding, right? You don't select some people to come like here. And yes, the family may spend all their lives saving and paying for the weddings. But here's the good news. You get to go to everybody else's weddings too. So you're not just paying for your wedding. That money is just money that every weekend practically throughout the whole year, everybody, even the poor, get to experience the best of food and dance, right? So that's a real communal understanding of wedding, which we've lost. So anyway, the fellow in charge was away at this wedding. They didn't know when he was going to come back. But Jesus compared life to like that, to this boss, this master who's away for an indeterminate period and then comes home late at night and surprises us and wants in. The point being, when God comes watching, we need to be aware of it or we lose the blessing. You know, I often talk about prayer. It's like the radio. None of us are listening to the radio now, but the radio frequencies are all around here, right? If any of us had a radio, we could turn it on right now and we'd hear, right? But what happens to us is we've removed God into some special sphere, you know, and wonder, you know, where's God and all that stuff. Whereas we just need to tune into the fact that all of life and all of goodness and everything that's good in life and everything that keeps life going and that allows us to overcome things, that's God. And so we need to be present to that and aware of that and have our lamps lit so that when these great moments come, we don't just pass them over and not realize how beautiful they are. Talk about smelling the flowers. We need to be aware of the blessings. Now, I don't know about you, but the return of Jesus is one of those subjects that I found confusing in my younger years. I grew up in a fundamentalist church where they tried to make everything literal, everything factual, right? And, you know, I was taught, and, you know, 13% of Canadian Christians believe that someday the Christians are all going to just disappear. Boosh. And if they're driving cars, the cars will go off the road, and then everybody left are all the, you know, sinful people who haven't been cured of their original sin. And then Jesus is going to come back 7 years after that, after the world's gone to a total mess, and he's going to actually reign in Jerusalem and get the world in good shape for 1,000 years. And then he's going to destroy the world and create a new one. So, I mean, really, you can see how people can believe conspiracy theories when 13% of Christians, many of them who are professors and smart people, believe that, right? And I used to believe that too. So it's just a reality more than a criticism. But the problem is that when we take the Bible literally or try to see the Bible as something that deals with facts, it always leads to confusion and absurdity. If a book exists that is truly about facts, it's not literature. It's science or some other kind of textbook. Literature tells stories. Poetry tells stories and uses images and metaphors to get at the deeper things that can't be seen, like love. I mean, how do you talk about love in any way other than with metaphors because you can't see it, right? You can't see kindness, you can't see respect, you can't, you know. So literature and story uses metaphors. Stories and poetry may contain facts. They may even be based on a real situation, or as the movies say now, inspired by a true event. Or they may have no facts, but they still can be true if they're talking about something like, David and Goliath. It doesn't really matter whether David and Goliath have actually worked out that way. The reality is kids love that story because it lets them know God's with them, and sometimes the little guy can take on the big guys, and it helps us too, because when we got something coming at us that seems too big, I like a story like David and Goliath because it lets me know that with God's help, we're going to get through, right? So it's the point of a story, just like the point of a movie doesn't depend on the special effects. And so the Bible doesn't make sense to a lot of people because it's so absurd, the way when you try and see it as a book of facts. Now, many of the earlier followers of Jesus believed he was coming back because they were convinced, as all Christians should be, that this experience of Jesus letting us know that God values everyone and that God's in the business of bringing heaven to earth, that did not end when Jesus died on the cross. The followers of Jesus began to realize after his death that his spirit was still with them and that the project was still a go. Yeah, they thought when he died it was all over. But what the resurrection is about is them rediscovering, no, his spirit's with us. We can still do this. And all the resurrection stories have ambiguity in them. They didn't recognize Jesus until after something happened. That's telling us it wasn't about his body getting up and walking around. I mean, even if he was the results of the cross with all the scars and stuff, you still would have known who it was. So the ambiguity is to let us know it's not about physical, factual realities. It's about spirit and energy and what God can do because of Jesus and because of the love that we all share. And so they believed that rallying around equality and fairness would triumph over all forms of persecution and oppression and life-threatening behaviors. They were convinced beyond any doubt that this meant that the powerful Roman Empire as they knew it would be overthrown. I mean, they believed that. Most people couldn't even conceive it, but the early Christians believed it. In fact, the entire book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible, is dedicated to envisioning how Rome as a governing power would be destroyed by the coming of Jesus. Now, the fact is that by the time Jesus died, Rome was going strong. They actually executed him. But his followers began to believe. Their faith was stimulated as they understood that his message was about a God who never gives up on this earth. And in time, as they began experiencing his spirit, as they used to gather together and support one another as we do today, they began to realize that Jesus does return and is a part of us and is in the business of finishing the job. So when God comes knocking, be dressed for action. Have your lamps lit, they cry. We see this in other spheres of society, the same kind of language. I've got an edition of Maclean's magazine. And it has a big picture of Terry Fox's face on the front cover. It was published on the 10th anniversary of his death. And what was the headlines in the Maclean's article? He lives! Because Terry Fox has accomplished more after his death than he ever did during his death in terms of his dream to raise money for cancer. That's what we're talking about. The miracles in the Bible have no meaning for me if they're literal, because we don't get to see those things. What good does it do me if Jesus walked on water? I haven't seen anybody walk on water. What good does it do me if Josh was able to stop the sun? If the biblical stories are to be taken literally, it's like talking about aliens from another nation that comes and does stuff. I mean, if they're not around today, it does nothing for me. But if those miracle stories are ways of amplifying a core truth that God is with us and can get us through everything and can enable us to have meaningful, wonderful lives despite the struggles of life, well, I'll buy that. That excites me. I get excited when I'm reminded that God's always at work to bring life and humanity to the place of living in peace and harmony. Listen to what Jesus says. Do not be afraid. That's what this is all about. It's encouraging us. Don't be afraid, little flock. The world may seem going crazy around you. Rome's so strong. Your kids are being executed. You got to hide. But don't be afraid. For it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, to bring heaven to earth. So sell what you don't need and give generously to one another. Make purses for yourself that do not wear out. That's an interesting image, eh? When we die, we don't get to take our goods with us. But I guess if we invest in community and in one another, then that's a purse that never wears out. We get to take that purse with us. An unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. You know, that's interesting too. We often say where our heart is, our treasure is, but it doesn't seem to work that way. But where we invest our money and our energy, our heart moves in that direction. That's why I tell my kids, watch out the people you hang out with. It's the people you hang out with are the people you're going to become like. So something to think about. So be dressed for action and have your lamps lit. Don't put your deepest faith in the stuff that can be taken from you, that can be stolen, that can be lost, that you have to leave when you die. Don't put your deepest faith in your money or your health. Trust that living for kindness and fairness will bring to you what you need and get you through what you have to get through. Be a part of Jesus returning to this world. Be a part of God knocking on the door, a part of opening to what God is offering when God knocks in our lives on our door. I mean, we thank God for the accumulation of the study and devotion of dedicated scientists who were able to create effective vaccines in 1 year, a task that would have taken at least 10 years just a decade or two ago and may not even have been possible. That's God knocking. The fact that people dedicate themselves for the betterment of humankind, that's God knocking. That's Jesus coming again, taking care of us. But we divide the secular and the sacred, and they both then have no meaning. It's when we connect them that there's great meaning. The magic of creation is beyond our imagination. Things seldom work out the way they plan, but they work out if we live the way of love. Little did we know that evil would use the pandemic to make people afraid and to politicize what's really a public health issue. People who grew up taking vaccines for the measles, polio, rubella, and tetanus as children and didn't think anything of it have been seduced into thinking that now taking a vaccine to stop a pandemic is a violation of their rights. How strange, eh? But by the time this is over, see, reality has a funny way of breaking down falsehood and lies. I mean, that's what God's in the business of. And by the time this is over, society will have learned again, and to some degree the hard way, what Jesus taught, that we are our brother and sister's keepers. We will relearn how dependent we all are individually on the common good. But things don't go as planned, and that's why we are told to look for signs of goodness, to expect God's help in unlikely ways. You see, the early believers were right. Rome stopped persecuting the Christians, but not one of them was able to imagine in a million years how that came to be. They thought that Jesus was going to come and there's going to be a big fight and Rome would just be destroyed. Instead, the emperor of Rome converted to become a Christian. No one saw that coming. See what I'm saying? we think it's hopeless, but we're just limited by our puny imaginations. And so what we've come to realize over the past 2,000 years is that the God we discover in Jesus comes to us over and over again in many ways, usually surprising ways. And our job is not so much to try and figure out how God will come, but to look for the ways that love and fairness and respect are coming in our lives and how we can be a part of it. That's what brings to our lives the presence and power of God. That's what enables us to share in the ministry of the divine, to be Jesus as we treat others as Jesus. But the hardest thing is to have faith in kindness in the face of struggle and evil. That's the hardest. The hardest thing is to return good for evil. So we got to really have faith that God is in the business of coming and knocking. So that when we're tempted to move to the dark side, we say, oh, we're not going there because God's not in the dark side. I'm staying on the side where God's going to come knocking and bring a breakthrough. God's given us that faith to hold on to our values. By grace are we saved through faith, and the faith is not of yourselves. It is a gift of God, lest any of us should boast in our own self. And when we do make mistakes, that's what Jesus said. We can change. We can acknowledge our mistakes. We can take responsibility for them and become wiser in the process and ultimately be blessed if we take responsibility. Because love redeems. God redeems. And that's what I love most about this story is it shows God to be the opposite of what religion usually makes God out to be. A humorless, serious, sour, narcissistic, judgmental, temperamental control freak. I mean, isn't that the image of God that most people have? Jesus as God is like a loving, generous father who derives pleasure from us doing well. Is that in your mindset? That you give God pleasure when you're doing well in your lives and have people loving you and loving them? I mean, don't you draw pleasure from your kids and grandkids when you see their lives doing well? There's a new way to think about God, deriving pleasure from us doing well. And Jesus said, blessed are those servants whom the master finds alert when he comes. Truly, I tell you, the master will fasten his belt and have them sit down to eat. The master will come and serve them. And if he comes during the middle of the night or near dawn and finds them so, blessed and happy are those servants. You see, this whole notion that we're born with a problem with God is so crazy. It corrupts everything. But when we see that we're God's kids, then it all makes sense. And everything is, and our struggles are to make life better for everyone because everybody's God's kids. And so we'll be blessed if we're aware that God's in the business of bringing these changes. A southerner once told me that blessing means being as happy as a hog in slop. I guess you'd have to raise pigs to appreciate that. But God wants us to be happy, filled with every truly good thing. And God knows how difficult the waiting can be sometimes. God knows the tendency we have to give up. God knows the struggle for goodness, the struggle to be a church, the struggle to be a better community, the temptation to say, who needs this? I'll be like so many others and just take care of me and mine. God knows how hard it is in the face of pain and heartache to believe that life can ever be good again. God knows that our problems sometimes seem so large we wonder if there ever can be a resolution. God knows there are times when we feel like God's not even there, that God's gone away on a journey and forgotten all about us. God knows that the world's troubles at times seem even bigger than God. So when God, like the master in the story, finally shows up knocking at our door, having never forgotten us, having traveled a long journey to get to us and to help us and to get us through, we want to be able to be aware of those moments of grace, those moments of goodness. And instead of resting when God comes to us, if we're on a long journey, we usually take a rest. Jesus changes that whole image and has God coming to us and rolling up her proverbial sleeves, and God sets to work caring for us, feeding us, providing for us with goodness and life for which we've been hungering and praying and working and waiting for. We just never know when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. The resolution of a long-standing problem will come. You never know when a job will come or how it'll come, but it can come. When a friend will come our way, when the opportunity to help someone significantly comes our way, the suffering and pain we feel now, when that will end, when human rights will push back the repression that we see in the world today, and humans will learn to live in peace with Mother Nature. That's what God's about. So let's be dressed for action and have your lamps lit. I was very moved at a wedding some time ago in Kent County. And I knew the parents and I knew the daughter who was getting married. I did the wedding, and they had the reception at the house, nice estate afterwards. And the grandmother of the groom got up and spoke. And she was in her 90s. And she says, I've lived a long life, and I've seen a lot. And there's a lot I could say. Do you too? She said, I have survived the gas chambers of Auschwitz, and my parents didn't. But having seen what I've seen and lived what I've lived, there's just one thing I want to give you as my advice to you. There's lots of good things you can focus on together and in your marriage and in your lives. But the one thing I treasure for you is my invitation that the two of you always do your very best to be kind to one another. She says, if you'll be kind, somehow, everything else will find its way. God comes knocking, and we invest in kindness. Let's let our lamps be trimmed so we see and embrace and are part of those precious moments.